All right, we are live. Hello, I'm Mark Small. This is Civil Discourse Now. It is March 2nd, 2021, streaming to you live from somewhere in central Indiana with my sidekick, Delilah. She is monitoring everything here. Coming up this weekend is the Marion County, Indiana GOP, that's Republican Party, caucus. That's where precinct committee people sit down and figure who's going to lead the party. Okay, so like Wednesday evening, there is a forum for candidates for Marion County Chair, and that's going to be held online. Washington Township, where I am, is sponsoring it. I think nobody's really kept me in the loop on that. Kind of, it's weird. And I am a Republican. I am primary qualified and a Republican in good standing according to the rules and the statute. Now, here's the thing. I got materials from some of the candidates, two of whom have dropped out. There are three left, but there are things that they're wanting to do to try and get the Republican Party back in a position of prominence, such as it once enjoyed in Marion County, which is in Indianapolis. Indianapolis is Marion County. Marion County has a couple of places that aren't part of Indianapolis as part of Unigov. There was unification of government, Unigov, in the late 60s. And so like Beech Grove is southeastern part of the county. They're not part of the city. And Speedway, which is where the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is located. Imagine that name, just coincidence for that town. It's officially not part of Indianapolis, but it's part of Marion County. And so Marion County Chair will be elected on Saturday. They're going to have a candidates thing for Wednesday evening, tomorrow evening. Now, here's the thing. They're wondering, how can we get people to vote for Republican candidates? How can we win? How can we go out there and win? We got to win. We got to win one with the GOP, right? Well, the circular that I saw for topics said it talked about fundraising and grassroots organizing and all that stuff. But then it said, how do we get independents and conservative Ds, I guess for Democrats, minorities, and how do we handle the Trump versus non-Trump groups? There's no mention of progressives in there. No mention of women, unless they're thrown into the category of minorities. But since they're a majority of the population, and I'm pretty sure the electorate, I think would be inaccurate to describe them as minority. If you're talking about minority, white males are a minority, but not in the way that they meant, I don't think. There's no mention of, any Latino groups, any African Americans. It's like you think you're going to get the voters to vote for the Republican Party because of what you did before. It's been so successful here in Marion County. 25 city county council seats, now 5 are held by the Republicans. The mayor of Indianapolis is a Democrat. 20 of the city county council, Democrats. All county-wide offices, I think there's 9, I think they're all held by members of the Democratic Party. But instead of saying we're a major metropolitan area, almost 1 million people just in Marion County, our city has progressive. Maybe we should look at that and say we need to make some adjustments here. We need to see that the people here are the ones who should run the party, not the party try to run the people and find some sales gimmick or gig that's going to catch their eye. And they're going to say, oh, it's the new improved Republican Party. Not when you got on the end of it a sentence that says, How do we deal with this conflict between Trump and non-Trump people? Let's make it simple. How do you handle the problem between racists and people who are kind of trying to ignore the fact that they got racists in their parties? The Democrats did that for several decades, and the Republicans had to deal with their own contingents of racists. That was a reality in this country. Now, because of the Southern strategy, as it was called, in the late 60s going into the early 80s, the Republicans took advantage of the fact that the Democratic Party angered racists in the South when Lyndon Johnson, as president of the United States, pushed through the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act and did a lot of things for civil rights in this country. Because of the Vietnam War, he doesn't get the credit that he should get for the great things he did in office. And don't get me wrong, Vietnam was wrong. And what he did in escalating the war there was wrong. But when the Republican Party has to say, well, how do we deal with this Trump, non-Trump? Well, you tell racists and bigots, go away. Form your own party. Now, how do you get voters to vote for the GOP then? You have people step up who are as candidates, just like the people who were saying that they were Tea Partiers in about 2005 to 2010, saying that they were wanting to take the Republican Party over, and they did it by primarying people. You don't just walk away from one of the two major political parties and say, well, they've got that one, the racists, the bigots got that party, the rest of us, the rational ones, we've got this one. That's worked real damn well for this country, hasn't it? You have Trump, who has instigated a riot in the Capitol, and he's included in this statement of how do we get people to kind of like come together. In 1920, going back 100 years from last year, the state of Indiana was controlled by the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. The KKK ran this state. D.C. Stevenson was the head of the Klan here. He was behind the election of the Governor Jackson. He was behind the election of the mayor of Indianapolis. And the reason the Klan lost power was that Stevenson was charged with and later convicted of homicide for Madge Oberholzer. She was a woman who worked in the State House in the office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. He kidnapped her, raped her, and he was convicted of homicide in regards to her death. You would have thought the Klan would have gone away. These are the same forces. At the CPAC conference last weekend in Orlando, the stage was in a configuration of a rune. A rune is a figure from mythic lore. And this is a Nordic loon. Loon. When they were using runes, they would carve them into stone so you don't see any curvature really. They're kind of all straight angles. Well, the rune that they use for the stage, the configuration of the stage at CPAC, is one that's anti-Semitic, that the Nazis used. And I'm not talking about just kind of comparing the right wing to Nazis. No, I'm saying that that was a configuration that they used for a stage. And they either were incredibly stupid and let that be used as a stage for something that was going to get a lot of publicity, especially from right-wing white supremacist groups that would be watching for something like that, and for people watching for white supremacist things that they don't want to see coming up like that, or they knew damn well what they were doing. So that brings me back to the Marion County Republican Party. It's light on issues when it comes to what the candidates for county chair are going to do. And at the same time, as the Marion County Republican Party is talking about how can we get power back, how can we win offices, the General Assembly, which meets here every year, is doing its best to take away any kind of home rule from Indianapolis because it's more blue. And that's the thing. I don't think that the Republican Party of Marion County is really paying attention. It's not that you win elections by suppressing the votes of those people who are more likely to vote against you. You win elections by convincing people you're right, and if they listen to you, they'll vote for you. That's the whole principle behind freedom, expression, free speech. Before I forget, cancel culture is not a First Amendment issue. If somebody decides to spend their money someplace else, that's a choice of the marketplace. And you've got to be a damn communist, a commie pinko, to try to say, I can't spend my money where I want to. That's as much of a vote as anybody's got. And I know when I put my head on my pillow at night, I don't have to worry about having given money to some crackpot that backed Trump, even going into the White House with some kind of a clipboard that talked about overthrow of the government. So here's the scoop. Wednesday, they're going to have a forum. It'll be interesting, some of the questions that are asked. I think that Marion County's Republican Party has to understand this is a blue county, and that doesn't mean that they have to change their party. It means that instead of precluding people from mentioning progressive politics or mentioning women or mentioning Latinos or mentioning African Americans or mentioning the environment or mentioning doing something about our infrastructure, devoting instead a sentence to an individual who just left the Oval Office only very reluctantly after having egregiously lost the election, devoting a sentence to him and not giving any consideration to other people who are relevant. That's kind of showing why it is that thought process is why the Republican Party in Marion County is losing. The party has to change to reflect the people. It's not an advertising company to give a pitch and get them over on our side. So I'm Mark Small. This is Civil Discourse Now. Got my decoder ring. I've received messages from several people interested in how to get the decoder rings. You will get messages if you know the right places to look for those messages. And if you figure it out, then you'll be getting a decoder ring, because I check mine all the time. And you can't have a good conspiracy without a decoder ring. Now, remember, drink your chocolate flavored breakfast drink. And I was going to say another thing for Vladimir Putin, because I always like to say something to him if he's watching. And what is it? Tevya Yabat or something? It means, well, never mind. But it's a kind thing to say to him, because the other things I'd say to him would be far worse. I'm Mark Small, Civil Discourse Now. Live long, prosper. May the force be with you always. Nanu, nanu. Take care.